Hey everybody, welcome to another podcast. This week's podcast is going to have a very special guest. I met him in Oshkosh last year. Great person. Enjoyed spending time with him. His name is Preston Holland. If you ever picked up the magazine Flying, which I know a lot of you guys have, he was the chief operating officer for Flying Magazine. Now the chief commercial officer for Flying Finance. Yep, they're in the finance business too. So if you're looking for an airplane to finance, he is your man. But anyways, this week's podcast is chock full of information kind of on how he got started in aviation. He's working on his private pilot license right now, but also a lot of things that Flying umbrella, I would call it now, has done as far as purchasing a lot of aviation media companies and kind of consolidating them. So without further ado, let's talk to Preston.
Going up, going up, going up, going up, going up, going up. Get it that I'm never going up, going up, going up, going up, going up, going up.
Everybody, welcome again to another podcast. I'm glad you're here. I've got a great person on, Preston Holland, who happens to be Flying Magazine's finance chief commercial officer. Before that, he was Flying Magazine's chief operating officer. So been with Flying Magazine for a long time, or the Flying Group, I should say. And we're glad to have him on. We're going to pick his brain about all things aviation. If you're in the market for financing an airplane or buying an airplane, he's your man to talk to. So without further ado, Preston, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Ernie, I'm good, man. It's good to catch up. It's been a little while since we connected at Oshkosh, and
that's right, Oshkosh.
I'm excited to be on.
What a great time!
Yeah, man.
Well, we're glad to have you on.
We'll let the listeners figure out where we actually met, but we should host like a meetup or something outside of the SOS tent. So.
You know, that was my first time at Oshkosh, and I was blown away, man. I can't wait for this year's Oshkosh.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be a great time.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, Preston, just give the audience a little bit of background about kind of how you came up in the aviation industry, and kind of the path that you took, and just a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, man. Well, I am kind of atypical in the industry, right? So my dad was a pilot growing up, told me stories about flying Barons and Bonanzas out of Atlanta, flying bank checks back when that was a time building job. So he flew into some crazy situations before I was born, and after I was born, my mom said that he needed to hang it up and pursue something else. So he pursued business activities outside of aviation, and would always tell me stories. I grew up. It's funny. There's a picture of my brother coming home from the hospital, and on the coffee table is an issue of Flying Magazine. And so, my roots go back a long ways. Wow. Always wanted to learn how to fly it. Talking to my dad about the original simulators and things like that as he's kind of coming up through. And so, when my friend Craig Fuller called me and said, "Hey, I'm buying Flying Magazine, and I'm kind of building the team around it as we reimagine what this company and what this brand could be inside of aviation," and he asked me to come join him. It was kind of a no-brainer for me, really get an opportunity to get into aviation and pursue some of that stuff. I'm actively pursuing my private pilot's license, so that was a part of the gig. Was I wanted to learn how to become a pilot, and so spent a couple of years in the Flying Magazine organization. So Flying Magazine was our first brand. We kind of then rolled up a series of aviation media brands, media portfolio of sorts. So, in the print and digital world, we own 28 different aviation media brands spanning from AvWeb, Aviation Consumer, IFR Magazine, Aviation Safety, Airline Geeks, AvBuyer, Flying, Plane and Pilot, and I'm probably missing some others. It's a long list. Business Air, we own aircraftforsale.com. So we own a lot of aviation media properties. Kind of did a roll up. So I was on the team that helped kind of roll a lot of those properties up together, and kind of reimagined aviation media as a whole. I don't know if a lot of people in the audience have been around aviation media for a long time, but we really came in and said, Flying is this really strong brand. And, a lot of people grew up reading Flying. Their dad, mom, grandpa, grandma grew up reading Flying Magazine. And so we said, hey, we get to be the stewards of the brand now. And so we acquired that. And then when we started to get into the aviation finance business, our CEO came to me and asked if I wanted to go spearhead that. And so we acquired an aviation finance company, and I stepped into that role last fall. So I still, have a big love for the magazine and for the media portfolio and all the stuff that we built over there and that they're continuing to build. And, I now get to be a fan of what they're building as opposed to being super involved in the day to day, but really excited for what's going on over there.
Well, there's a lot there. Let's unpack some of that. So you were asked to come on to Flying Magazine. What was your job before then? What were you doing prior to Flying Magazine?
Yeah, so I ran a service business. It was a franchise business. We actually did. It's like one of the world's least sexy jobs. If you're familiar with the chairs that take grandma up and down the stairs, I ran a business that did that, and home elevators and ramps and commercial elevators and stuff like that. So it was a very blue collar, totally different industry. And I had kind of risen up through some of the leadership ranks and was happy, totally not looking. I wasn't actively looking, but my dad taught me when I was young that if anybody asks if you're looking for a career opportunity, the answer is never no. It's always, let's have a conversation. And I was lucky that this one turned out to be pretty cool.
Well, that is sound advice from your dad. I would echo that. You're never not looking. It's always, I'd like to hear more about that opportunity, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because you never know what it could lead to. I mean, if you had told me 5 years ago that this is what I'd be doing, I'd tell you that you're crazy. But it's turned out really well, and we have a lot of fun here. I'm here at our corporate headquarters in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and we have a good time. We have a great office culture, and we have over 280 employees across the country. So it's a rapidly growing company. Are doing a lot of really cool, exciting, fun things. I host a podcast now in which I interview top business aviation leaders that are kind of moving and shaking. So it's a lot of fun. The media side of the business unlocks a lot of doors that kind of like yourself, right? We're here on a podcast, and it connects people in a way that is organic and it's really cool. So
yeah. Sure does. That's super cool. So, okay, you came from a company completely outside of aviation. Now you're getting thrust into aviation, which is sexy, right? Everybody agrees that aviation is super sexy. Was that part of the enticement?
Until you get into it.
A lot of work. But was that part of the enticement to get back into aviation?
Yeah, it really was. I mean, for me, it was an opportunity to do something and be involved in an industry that I had been a fan and an observer of up until this point, right? So I was able to get into an industry in which, my love for aviation ever since probably I was 4 or 5 years old, right? So it's, flying on airliners to, watching general aviation aircraft, kind of, and the entire gambit in between. Right. So that doesn't ever go away. And once it's inside you, it's really hard to get rid of. And so it never made sense for me to learn how to fly. I've literally probably since I was 14, genuinely been looking at it. But wasn't in the cards for as I was growing up through high school. Went to college, didn't have an aviation program there, and so it kind of it was always burning in the back of your mind type thing, but it wasn't necessarily reality for me yet. And so with the opportunity to get into aviation, I was like, man, this is awesome and a great opportunity.
What did you study in college?
I studied business administration. So I a pretty general business degree. It means I can read a P&L and I know how to do a weighted average cost of capital calculation.
There you go.
And a whole lot of other stuff that's like not really relevant.
Right. Oh, cool. Well, now describe your journey in Flying Magazine. I assume you weren't hired straight away as the COO. You moved your way up?
Yeah. So I came in, it's funny. I came in as the vice president of sales. So I have a sales background, and that was kind of what I was brought into. When I like to characterize the early days of flying as we were 100-year-old startup, right? Which means that everybody kind of wore every hat, and we got stuff done, and it was, less about having super specialized and more having Swiss Army knives on the team. And so I was vice president of sales for 3 weeks. And after the announcement, we brought on the sales leadership from flying that was existing. And so I moved into an operations role at that point. So I spent the first 6 months of our journey setting up backend systems and CRMs and customer, the magazine subscription software, evaluating. I mean, we went from flying was running full cylinder, and we were the startup buying the established brand. And so we had to spend 6 months standing up systems and products and, HR and legal and all that kind of stuff, like on the fly pretty quickly. And so I moved into an operations role pretty quickly just because, I am one of my key skill sets is I'm a figure it out guy, right? If I don't know how to do it, I'm going to figure out how to do it. And so spent about 6 months doing that. And after setting up those systems, and as we started to think through scale and setting up the leadership team, our CEO came to me and said, "Hey, look, you're essentially doing most of the functional roles of a senior leadership, team member, and I'd like to give you, a little bit more authority, internally in the company." And so he asked me to step into the COO role, and along with our head of strategy, our chief strategy officer, he would go buy businesses and then he'd throw them over the fence to me. And then it would be my job to integrate. Right. So he'd go buy them. Our CEO would structure the deal. Yeah, exactly. We acquired Plane and Pilot in a week, for instance.
Wow.
From the initial time that we had the conversation to when we closed.
Wow. So Flying Magazine and Plane and Pilot were my go-tos, on the come up. I would always have a subscription and take them with me on the road. Even when I was flying in the military, long haul flights, you got to do something. So, there's tons of magazines always available. So, that's
and there's no Wi-Fi up there, right?
Oh no.
So we acquired flying we announced it July of 2021. And then from there, our first acquisition was Business Air and Aviators Hotline and Aircraft for Sale. So that acquisition closed in June of 22. I may be off by a month, around May, June of 22. And then Plane and Pilot was in April of 23. And then AvWeb was in July of 23. AvBuyer was in October-ish of 23. So basically spent 3 years in due diligence, essentially.
Yeah. So you're basically consolidating a lot of the aviation media programs into one umbrella, which is flying. So
Exactly.
Other than going out and acquiring a lot of these previous media companies, what did you guys do once you've acquired them? And then what's kind of the vision forward of Flying Magazine with all these other media companies under the umbrella?
Yeah. So originally, the original thesis was that aviation media was at an inflection point where there was kind of you have all of this cutting edge technology and kind of the eVTOL space, which is it next year? Is it going to be in 10 years? Who knows? I think the target on that keeps moving. Right. But we said, look, there is an entire new generation of aircraft. You have, the LSA market and a lot of, some of the reinvigoration that was coming into the, LSA market in general aviation. There's a lot of technology that was happening. And at the same time, there was a aviation media tended at the time to be one brand inside of a larger brand that frankly didn't really know what to do with the aviation guys. So they all sat in, kind of their own little wing, and, no one really understood them. The executive team was like, okay, we get on airliners, we get that world, but didn't understand what general aviation was. And so we said, look, if we can create a home for all these different aviation media properties, and then when we get them all together, what we found is, look, when we acquire a brand, we bring the existing team with, and we say, look, we're going to make investments in what it is, the content that you guys are creating, and really see what we can build as a scaled media organization. And so when we bring those people into our platform, we ask them, from day one, what would you, if you were king for a day, what would you do? How would you reimagine your brand? What would you see in that? And so we enable them and empower them to create new media offerings, right? So Inside Aviation is one of my favorite, most recent. Kevin Cortez and Ryan Ewing together. Ryan is the editor of Airline Geeks, and Kevin Cortez, who is our director of audience development. The two of them basically get to talk to interesting people all around the aviation industry to talk about, bleeding edge. They talked about the FAA last week and the reauthorization bill. They talked to Jack Sweeney, the guy who, the Elon jet tracker guy, right? So really bringing in, making aviation a little bit more accessible to the general public, right? And so, how do we welcome more new people into aviation? So that's an exciting new show that's kind of sprung up. Aircraft for Sale is another one, right? There was a yearning for a newspaper style classifieds print product, which for me as a digital native, I frankly didn't understand. I am a digital native. I am cell phone first. I'm of that generation, and I said, I don't really understand the newsprint and the desire. But what we found was, one, what we were talking about, right, is that if you're flying on a cross country and you have nothing to do and you're up above cell service, like, what are you going to do while you're up there? Might as well shop for planes, right? And if you've got, and there was a yearning for days of old of shopping for airplanes in a newspaper format, and so, so we brought that back, which is really exciting. It's it's a really high quality, beautiful. It's in all the FBOs across the country, and have seen some really good results for people listing as well as for our commercial clients that are in there, and our subscriber base enjoys getting it with their flying magazine, and so. So we try and empower the teams to come up with new content, with new ideas, and then how do we help support that from a business standpoint?
Was there a common theme with all these? I mean, you guys bought a ton of media companies in aviation. Was there a common theme of their ask? Was there something kind of specific, like that they all needed?
Yeah, everybody wanted new paper. That was kind of the, across the board. New paper for any of the print products. New paper was kind of the number one thing. So here I've actually got an old copy of Flying and a new copy of Flying to show. Okay. All right. So first I'll show you. This was one of the last issues under the old guard. So this is old Flying magazine. You see, it's pretty thin. The paper was not great. The colors were kind of washed out. It wasn't kind of it was the days of old. And what you had, and what you have in print publishing, this is kind of in general, this is just a little bit of insight into the business behind it, is that print publishers would take on a lot of subscribers that frankly weren't really core subscribers to that magazine, right? So it would be, you'd have a kid at school that say, hey, do you want this magazine? They see the airplane, they'd circle that one, they say, yeah, that's what I want, right? But when they took those on, the publisher was actually hemorrhaging cash with those subscriptions because they still had to print and fulfill the subscription, but they weren't actually seeing any revenue off of that subscription. So they were, for every new subscriber that they would onboard, they would actually lose $8 or $9 for every incremental subscriber, which meant that, okay, so if we're going to pull on levers, we degrade the paper quality or make it less heavy so that the post office would give us a better rate. And so it kind of had this compounding effect where now all of a sudden it's not brand safe for some of your advertisers because they say, hey, look, that doesn't align with what our brand message is. And so we came in, this is probably 2 issues old. So this is the new Flying magazine. So you can see them, side by side. Like we got rid of a lot of the, words on the front that was optimized for newsstand. And we said, look, my wife, and I'll say this, my wife, I'm trying to convince her to get into a GA aircraft with me. She said, come talk to me when you have 2 engines. And even then, she kind of wants turbine powered. So we got a while before I get my wife into an aircraft. She'd get into the Vision Jet because she said it's bigger and it has a parachute. So I was like, all right, well, maybe in 30 years, I don't know. We'll see. But this issue where when this comes to my house, my wife puts this on our coffee table because she says, that's beautiful. It's pretty. I really like what it stands for. I mean, the colors are, intentionally popping and it's high quality because if we're going to print and if we're going to do a print magazine, then we're going to do a print magazine that people actually want to consume, and something that is aspirational in nature. And we have a variety of different titles, right? So not all of them are up to, call it that, weight or paper quality or things like that, but we do upgrades kind of across the board for the titles that come onto the platform. And in doing so, we're elevating the reading experience for the audience, which drives more subscriptions, which with high quality subscriptions means that advertisers know that they're reaching the people that they want to be reaching anyways. Right. And it creates this positive flywheel effect that actually negates a lot of the bad behavior that previous publishers had done to the magazines.
Wow. And you did say your goal is to basically increase membership subscriptions within the magazine. Are these from basically people that are just starting to learn to fly or getting that aviation bug, or do you see just kind of all over the map? Yeah.
So each of our publications has a specific focus, right? So flying has been over the last almost 100 years, the publication of record for aviation. And that's kind of across the spectrum. That is not limited to general aviation and learning how to fly. Now, by making a higher form factor, we find that we attract the people that do actually want to learn to fly because it's aspirational in nature. And so a lot of people tend to see that and say, oh, I want to learn how to fly. Here's going to be my publication. And we have content in there that is geared towards people just starting out in their journey, or, kind of like me, right? I'm about halfway through my PPL, and I read the content in flying, especially some of the columns that are situational awareness and things like that, where it's like, okay, I'm just going to consume things like that I learned about flying from that column, where I can see, okay, here's a scenario in which how would I respond in that scenario, and kind of visualize some of that. And then reading about new aircraft. I mean, it's cool to read about new aircraft, right? And what's kind of what type of new stuff's coming. Can I afford one? No. Do I hope to someday? Yes, I'd love to. And hopefully by the time I'm 50 and can afford an airplane, these 2024s are like 20 years old, and I can actually afford one, right? And but Plane and Pilot, for instance, right, is really tailored at that. That's kind of my, what I read the most of is Plane and Pilot, because it's really tailored towards that general aviation flyer, whether you're just starting to fly all the way up through, single engine turbine. So, single engine turboprops, owner flown stuff, like the aircraft that I'm most likely to fly, right? I have no aspiration to go be a corporate pilot. I have no aspiration to go be an airline guy. I applaud those that do, and I'm thankful for them, and I root for them, and I'm friends with a lot of them. That's not where I'm at in my journey. And so Plane and Pilot is really hand tailored towards me and the journey that I'm in. Aviation safety, for instance, is really tailored towards those who want to go really deep into that subject matter of aviation safety. That's for CFIs, CFIIs, instructors. It's really that deep dive into some of those topics. IFR, I'm not yet to IFR, so it's not super relevant to me, but I hope that it will be here shortly once I move through my PPL and move into my IFR rating. So really kind of creating these sub niches. With aviation is niche. There is not that in the grand scheme of scale and the world and the United States, there's not that many of us, right? There's not that many people flying aircraft. And so we've actually niched even further down inside this subject of aviation to really tailor towards those different audiences. And then because for me, I'm not an IFR pilot, and I'm not getting a ton of, IFR content in some of the platforms that I'm reading. If I want to, once I move to there, then I'd move over kind of into that IFR content.
You said something very interesting. It's niche down. General aviation is big for me. I love general aviation, obviously on a plane, and I love the freedom that it affords me. And I want to share that, and I want to get that out, because general aviation, it's been kind of on the ropes lately with all the environmental stuff going on and, all that stuff. So I want to see more people coming into general aviation. What is Flying Magazine doing, specifically to try to gain more subscribers and pull more people to general aviation?
Yeah. So so it's twofold, right? So when you think about a print product and you think about a digital product, the strategy behind how you attract new audiences is a little bit different. So first, on the print side, it's creating a product that we want all of our pilots that read our magazine to tell their friends that they're like, hey, I know you have maybe asked me once or twice about flying and you've been curious. I'll give you a real example. I have a friend who lives in Nashville. I'm in Chattanooga, Tennessee. He's in Nashville. His in-laws are over by Memphis. So by car, it's 2.5 hours each direction to either his parents that live here or her parents that live in Memphis. He called me, I don't know, 3 months ago. I was like, hey man, I'm thinking about getting my pilot's license because I'm tired of, especially around like Thanksgiving or holidays or Memorial Day, it's like 2 hours to Chattanooga and then 4 hours over to Memphis and then 2 hours back to Nashville. He's like, it's terrible. He's like, I don't like driving. And I've thought, if I could learn how to fly and fly me and my wife back and forth, like that'd be something that I'd be totally interested in. And I was like, hey man, and this print version of Flying Magazine is appealing to him because he may not necessarily be as well versed and like what you were saying, right? You've been reading the content for years, and so frankly, like the form factor is not as super relevant to the people who have been reading flying for forever. It's those new people that are coming in from a print side where it's like, oh, this is aligned with the rest of my life, right? Which is maybe you appreciate a nice leather wallet, or you like the smell of a nicer car, right? Or some of those like tactile things that say, okay, now I'm going to associate some of those feelings with kind of this physical environment. So that's on the print side. On the digital side, it's really tailoring and creating content, frankly, for search. I mean, search engine optimization, and we're in the world of AI, and it is a topic of conversation here internally, of what is the future of AI. I mean, you go to Google and half the time now, as of today, I mean, this recording is May 20th. As of today, Google is actually just going to spit you the answer, right? Based off of the content that we're writing, but they're just going to spit you the answer. And so we want to welcome you into that fold and really teach you how to fly, but it's writing content that's optimized for that person who is just casually searching how to learn how to fly, or best online ground school, or how do we bring them through that funnel where they are in the very, very tip top of just, I'm curious, right? Call it general aviation curious. Search is going to be the first. If they're not going to ask somebody that they know, which there's a solid chance that they don't know somebody who does fly, or they, even worse, to a certain extent, they know someone who flies, they just don't know they fly. They're like, oh, I didn't know you were a pilot, right? I've been learning how to fly. So it's like, hey, tell your story, post pictures on Facebook. Like it's not a flex. It is really it is sharing in the joy and the love of general aviation, but it's search. That's where they're going to go. That's where the American consumer today defaults to when they don't know about something, is they go google.com and then they ask their question, right? So how do we think about being right at the forefront and then bring them through a journey? So maybe that's through email drip campaigns, or maybe that's through offering ground schools via some of our partners that we've partnered with, or content really tailored around that, so that then they feel more confident as they're learning how to fly. And then we can be with them along their journey as they're starting and going to commercial and multi and ATP and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, man, you guys really do have a corner on all the market with that, with all the products that you offer. So that's really cool. There was something, and I forgot how I got onto it, but I had no idea Flying Magazine owned aircraft for sale. And I think I saw the logo. Man, I didn't realize that Flying Magazine owned that. So then you start going into it, and I'm starting to get hot and heavy in the real estate market, and the whole value, approximate value of the property you're looking at. And I noticed aircraft for sale has that on there, where even going to the car business, right? Like they're saying, well, is this a fair deal? Is it a good deal? I absolutely love that part about aircraft for sale, and I've been hitting that a lot. For our hopefully upgrade into a turbine airplane here soon. But talk a little bit more about that, because I am super interested in kind of how you guys came up with that, because that is probably the first one that I've seen so far that actually gives kind of a hack at what the valuation would be like.
Yeah. So One of the things that we figured out pretty early was bring a lot of smart people together that care about the topic and then empower them to do stuff, right? So what a lot of Flying Magazine and the stuff that we do is literally we are scratching our own itch and then bringing that to the market, right? So you go all the way kind of to the early days of flying. It was, look, I am of the generation that me personally, I wouldn't read this. I just go to Google to consume content in this form factor, in this paper quality, in that kind of stuff. Whereas people of call it my generation, plus or minus 15 or 20 years, appreciate tactile experiences. And if we're, I get so tired of, even on this podcast, I mean, I had to mute every single notification that I have, and I still got a phone call that punched through here like 2 seconds ago. And I'm like, shut up. Like I'm doing something, right? Whereas but I'm going to consume content that's in a high elevated form factor. So that's what we did, because that's what us in the general leadership team, and this is not exclusive to me. I'm one of a team of really, really talented people that work here. So Plane Price was born out of the same idea. So a little bit of background, so when we got into the two-sided marketplace business with Business Air, Aviators Hotline, and Aircraft for Sale. The reason that we did that was, one, we had all of this traffic, search traffic from Flying Magazine, high intent traffic from direct, click-throughs from emails, everything like that. We said, we have all this traffic and we kind of can't really send them anywhere to do anything with that information, right? So as you were, and probably, Ernie, what type of aircraft do you own?
Cirrus, SR-22.
Okay, so you're an SR-22 guy. Okay, so here's the tip. Probably, if I had to guess, your journey to buying an SR-22, you probably hit Flying Magazine at some point, whether digitally or print, to read some sort of flight test review or some sort of new feature or something like that on the SR-22. Because you said, okay, I've talked to my friends. They kind of told me about how much they like it. They love the Cirrus life. So now I'm going to go start doing a little bit of my own due diligence. I'm going to go start reading content. So you probably ended up on Flying. You probably also ended up on Aviation Consumer with the SR-22 Buyer's Guide. You probably also stumbled upon, but then after you took that step, you're clearly in market, right? So you're deep researching about a very niche topic. You are in market to buy. So then you go from there, and you probably went to one of our competitors on the two-sided marketplace side now, and you said, okay, I've got my Flying article here, and I've got my car gurus, if you will, over here, right? I've got Car and Driver, I got Car Gurus. I'm reading about this aircraft. Now I'm searching over here. We said, what if we could unify that experience and say, hey, I'm going to read about it, and now I'm going to go buy one, and then I'm going to finance it, right? And so like you can kind of see as we kind of assemble the different pieces. Well, one of the things, there are multiple people on staff within our organization that have either bought, shopped, sold, transacted, brokered aircraft. And the number one thing that everybody's got a big problem with is I have no idea if I'm getting a good deal or not. Like I have no idea if I'm getting ripped off. I have no idea, what should I actually be thinking about, right? Because when you're buying an aircraft, I mean, there's probably 100 different data points that go into buying an aircraft that determine its value. The big one being how much are you willing to pay for it, right? I mean, it's kind of that. It's not like the 2019 Yukon XL, right? I say this because I'm shopping for one. My family is growing, and my wife loves to send them to me on Facebook. There are so many of those that transact in a given year that you can generally tell, okay, it's got about this many miles, got about this many features, right? It's pretty structured, right? There's not a whole lot of fluctuation. Right. And so that's kind of where a lot of those algorithms come from. Well, we were all sitting around saying, look, if we were going to have a two-sided marketplace, what would our ideal aircraftforsale.com be? It would have a confidence score in pricing. So I'm relatively confident that I'm buying something for a good price, right? I don't need a script. I need a good deal. I need to know I'm not getting ripped off, but I'm not looking for at a certain point, if you get a good deal, there might be a reason for it. And so we said, okay, how do we build this Plane Price, right? And so we hired to come run Aircraft for Sale. His name's Ian Hoyt. He's our director of marketplace. He was previously at RV Share. We got connected. He's an airplane guy, has owned aircraft before, has a proven track record in building two-sided marketplaces in RV Share, which is rental. It's Airbnb for RVs, right? There's just a little bit of difference to come build Aircraft for Sale. He leads that product. He reports to our CTO, who's currently in market for 180. And he is like, we're literally constantly like, hey, I would love for this feature to be an Aircraft for Sale. And usually about 2 to 3 weeks later, it might show up, right? So plane price is one of those. If you look at kind of accident history that's public, it's public data, right? You're going to get there anyways. We're consolidating it all down to one concise buying experience. Oh, now I want to read an expert opinion. I want to go read flying that aircraft. You can click on the article right in the listing, go read the article, what we said about it. Okay, cool. Awesome. Now I know what people are saying. I see the damage history. I see that I'm getting a pretty good deal. Well, now when I go to inquire and ask that person who's selling, I've qualified myself 6 different ways by reading the content and all of that kind of stuff but it literally is all birthed out of, I would love to see this in the world. And so therefore let's go make it work.
How did you guys get, because, I own a aircraft brokerage as well. How did you find, and it's very difficult to find what the actual airplane closed at, unlike real estate where you could see it, it's on a public document. This is what the piece of property sold for. How did you do that? Or how did you, I guess, navigate that with Aircraft for Sale?
Yeah, so there's a little bit of secret sauce in there that I can't talk about exactly how it derives the price. But I will tell you this, there's over 4,000 different data points that determines, and it's wrapped in some technology in the back end that basically takes in what the asking price is. It reads the listing and then spits out on the other side, kind of comes out with that. So there's confirmation data in there. There's also a lot of technology that's running in the back end. The other thing is that it's updating in real time, right? As you and I both know, especially being on the transaction side, you being in the brokerage side, me being in the finance side, the aircraft marketplace is ever dynamic, and you could have 2 of the exact same aircraft and they're going to transact completely differently, right? So you and I both know that. If you have something that is dated 6 weeks ago or 12 weeks ago or 18 weeks ago, that data is already old. And so it constantly needs to be refreshed. So it's refreshing in real time to determine what kind of that fair price is. And we give a range. I mean, we give a range and a confidence score, right? Hey, we're really confident because we know a lot about this model. Or if it's, you got some STCs in there and there's a conversion and there's a whole lot of stuff, secret stuff in there that, determines the asking price. We'll say, hey, we think it's probably worth this, but we're only about medium confident that this is what the price is.
Well, I think that's, like you said, price is a huge factor for people when they're actually searching. So giving a product that, you're fairly confident about this price, that's only beneficial for the buyer and the seller too. Yeah. I mean, we're coming off this sugar high of COVID where plane prices just went bananas. And now it's coming back. We're seeing it. You guys are seeing it too, where inventory's picking up. And guess what? When inventory picks up, there's downward price pressure on that. So I think
the law of supply and demand.
That is. Yeah. So I think it's good to see that out there. I wish there was a little bit more transparency in, the aviation market to where we can actually see what planes are closing at and tighten that needle a little bit further on,
Yeah. Well, and I think, it's an interesting conversation because brokers either love it or hate it, right? So you own an aircraft brokerage and you love it. There are some brokers out there that hate it because they say, oh, well, that's the value that I provide. That's the value that I provide to the marketplace. Yes, you do provide that value to the marketplace. And we have broker partnerships across the industry. And that's from, hot air balloons all the way through G700s and everything in between. And we rely on those market experts to help inform why our model may be wrong, right? So let's say you listed an aircraft and it had a conversion on it and it had, XYZ that was what was determining the price. Like, look, we're just people trying to build something cool, right? And we also don't claim to be 100% right 100% of the time, right? And so we look to our partners in the brokerage community to say, look, we want to build this to bring you more qualified buyers and to help you sell more aircraft. At the end of the day, we want you to transact, right? So if we can build a trusted marketplace that's going to help you transact, that's better for you, better for us, better for everybody. You tell us, help us inform the model by you saying, hey, here's the 4 things that's underpriced. Your price is underpriced, or your price is overpriced, right? It's not showing something right. Because we are collaborative by nature as a company culture. We're not combative. I mean, look, we're not out to be. I don't think you're ever going to buy an airplane online. There is so much nuance to the aircraft purchase process. We're buying cars online. If we do it, we're probably 20 years out from ever buying an airplane online, just because of, and you know this and I know this, there's so many pieces to this puzzle that need to get put together in order to transact in an aircraft. So we look to the people in the brokerage community to partner alongside us and tell us the features that you want, right? If you have something that you said, like if you sent me an email after this podcast, you said, hey, Preston, aircraft for sale is great. Love what you guys are building. Here's the 4 things that I would love to see as a broker. That gets put into a development queue. We have an entire development team that they shipped 6 updates this morning to put into perspective kind of how fast we ship updates. And you said, hey, I'd love to see this. We're going to enter it into the queue. Ian and his team, they prioritize backlog. And then we'll send you an email and say, hey, by the way, that feature you asked us for 3 weeks ago, it's live here. You can see it in person.
Wow. That's awesome. So real-time development of this.
Yeah. I mean, it's
there are features coming in all the time, it seems like.
Yeah, we try and ship fast. I mean, it's, I can tell you a couple of the features. Let's see. Today we fixed the logo and nav area at the top of the search was too big. We were missing some listings in some of the search features. We added a make model category parent to each footer. And all the registration pages now have the finance calculator on them. That was what shipped this morning. And that's on top of a list of 7 other items that shipped last Monday morning. So it's a constant development cycle, because we're truly trying to build something that everybody in the ecosystem wants to use, because at the end of the day, that is better for the ecosystem as a whole. And it brings in more of the people that may be sitting on the fence of the outside that say, oh, I thought it was I thought you had to buy a brand new SR22T G7 at $140 or $1,400,000 new off the floor to even get into general aviation. It's like, no, like you buy a 152. I don't know if my wife didn't want me in a 152. I'm, a little too thick for a 152, but you could buy one, right? Yeah. It is much more approachable, but you have to give that confidence level, because if not, there's going to be so many people that just sit on the sideline and say, it's too opaque. There's not enough transparency here. I don't get it. I don't understand it. I don't want to invest the time to learn it. And so I'm just going to sit out.
Yeah. Yeah. What are you seeing in the market right now? Are you seeing that kind of general slowdown a little bit with aircraft transactions?
What we are seeing in very specific markets some slowdown. The 172 market is still insanely hot. I mean, it's driven by a lot of flight schools. It's driven by a lot of TikTokers. I literally saw one yesterday. There's TikTokers or guys on Instagram that are like, let me teach you how you can make all this cash flow on leasing your aircraft back to a flight school. They never talk about how expensive an engine overhaul is. I find that interesting that they never include that part. But the flight training, the certified flight training market is still on fire. I mean, if you can find a 172 listed that has a G1000 in it, you're going to pay top dollar. There's a couple of markets that I think there's probably some deals to be had. I think the back tail of the SR2022 market has leveled off. That's kind of come back to orbit, if you will. It was in the stratosphere. Right. We've kind of come back to more realistic pricing there, but the backlog at Cirrus stays strong. So a 1-year-old vintage SR22 is still going to command a premium for being able to skip the line. Right. So There's still some of that behavior. Older turbines have started to slow down, especially kind of the pre-2000 vintage, if you will. Those are really calming down compared to where they were 12 months ago or 24 months ago.
The Meridian market, TBMs.
Yeah, the TBM 700 market's slowing a little bit, but they're all technically type certified as a 700. So to clarify, I'm talking about the one that's branded 700. The 830, I think 830 market. The TBM market, the numbering conventions always throw me off. Yeah. But like the 940 market, still on fire. 960 market, still on fire. It's kind of the older vintage single engine turbines that are starting to ease off. But again, easing off is like 20%, 30% over where we were in 2019, not like returned to, kind of 2019 levels. So we're easing off, but I wouldn't say that like, one, I wouldn't say that they're crashing by any means. I wouldn't say that like it's like the sky is falling and there's a bunch of deals to be had, but they are cooling, a little bit more than 1, 2, 3-year-old aircraft.
1, 2, 3. Okay. Well, let's tie in that to flying finance now. So you've got this ecosystem built out. It's integrating really well, and you had the finance piece as you talked about in the beginning. Describe and talk about the finance piece. How did that come to fruition, and what's the goal? What is the number one goal of the finance sector?
Yeah, so the reason that it came about is, again, we were moving people through the transaction in order to help facilitate more aircraft being bought and sold in a given year, right? So you think about the things around the buying transaction process. And again, it is all birthed out of firsthand experience, right? Our CEO went to go buy an aircraft and he was like, honestly, the financing experience could be elevated. Right. He said, I would love to go in and disrupt, what that is. So Craig came and said, look, we acquired a small aircraft finance company and integrated it into the rest of our systems. Right. So you'll see our ads in all of our magazines. You'll see them on all of our websites. You'll see them in emails and things like that, where an aircraft for sale is our number one lead source. Right. So aircraft for sale, people are buying, they've shown intent. They go to inquire. We say, hey, do you want to learn about financing? They say yes. One of our team of aircraft professionals then has a conversation with them. The other piece is that our team understands airplanes. So, two of the frontline guys on our side, Keller and Kimsey, they office, just off camera here. And both CFIs, Keller's an ATP rated pilot. He flew for the airlines. So they both speak the language. Logbook review is, second nature. We understand what to look for. If you go to your local bank to go finance an aircraft, and I don't know if you did this when you went, you're probably going to get, I don't know what an SR-22 is. So I'm going to have to ask somebody, and 8 weeks later, they're like, yeah, we'll give it to you, but just because you've got a deposit with us and we have an existing relationship. Yeah. And it may not necessarily be market terms of what you could be getting in the marketplace, right? So we create a level of efficiency in kind of the aircraft financing markets. And, we'll see anywhere from, airline pilots. We do a lot of airline pilots. We love work with airline pilots. One, they're easy to underwrite, right? They're high W-2 earners that usually don't have a really complicated financial package, and they're not buying, more airplane than they can afford. To small business owners, high net worth individuals, that are wanting to learn how to fly, all the way up through, we cut off about the Fortune 200, right? We help some family offices and things like that with heavy jet transactions and things like that. I've got a couple clients that are refinancing Challenger 604s and G550 and stuff like that. And so, and anything in between. But really, we're able to speak the airplane side, and we're able to say, look, here's what market is. And we're able to give solid sound advice and be able to help our clients transact quicker. And then we've built some technology in the back end, right? Similarly to the plane price situation, where we've built some technology that helps accelerate some of that process in the transaction space in the finance side. So so anything, call it, $80,000 and up is about kind of 80,000 to 20 million is about, what we transact in on a regular basis. And that can be anything from, avionics upgrades all the way up to, buying a corporate jet.
So, man, that's super interesting. Is Flying Finance a broker, or is it underwriting the loan? How does that?
So we're a broker. We have over 100 banks on our platform.
Mm-hmm.
But what we do is we underwrite the loan internally to determine what market rate is for that loan package, right? So
Okay.
we take in your financials. I mean, what I tell people is, unless you're buying $150,000 in down aircraft, this is going to be a lot more like buying a home. And then if you get into the corporate side, it's going to be much more like an M&A activity as opposed to like applying for a boat or a car. So it's debt schedules, it's tax returns, it's P&Ls, it's balance sheets, it's kind of the whole 9 yards. We take it, underwrite it internally, create a presentation to basically say, and then we go to market with that loan and we say, okay, here's the attractive pieces of this loan. This is why everybody's going to want it. We take it to our lending partners across there. The thing about banks is, one, that they're not all that good at interfacing with customers. Banks are really good at protecting deposits, which is what we want, right? That's why we all love banking, right? Is they're very conservative. But what that means is they sacrifice some in the go-to-market functionality. What we serve for the banking partners is we go find the clients, we advise the clients, we help coach them through the process, we help make sure that their financial package is as clean and crisp as possible. And then we take it out to market and we say, hey, look, this is what we're looking at. This is what we're asking for. And then we take bids back and compare with the client and figure out what aligns best with what their goals are, right? So different people are oriented for different stuff, right? And aircraft finance is a little bit backwards, especially as you talk under $1 million, is actually the less you try and borrow, sometimes that actually drives your rate up, which is totally backwards, right? Yeah. Especially, at like, there's a break point between about $150,000 and $250,000 that if you put 50% down, you're actually going to pay more on interest rate than if you, paid up. It's totally backwards and it takes everybody by surprise, but that's kind of what the market does. It's, it's an inefficiency in the banking system. And so we're able to help create some of that competition for your loan. Because if you're a very creditworthy individual and you have strong finances, there's a lot of lending institutions that are going to want that loan in their portfolio, and your personal bank may not give you the best terms as compared to what you could get in the market out there.
Yeah. So Preston, walk with me through, say, just a general transaction. Say, I'm an airline pilot and I've saved up about $30,000. I want to put 30% down on a $100,000 airplane. What would that? Can you walk me through kind of what 30,000 foot view of what that process would look like?
Yeah. So first step is to apply, right? So we're going to gather some general information. We've got an online application, which makes us fairly unique in the aircraft finance world. Not everybody, some people make you print it out and fill it out and scan it and all that stuff. We have a fully online application. So you fill one of those out, then we're going to determine, in that particular scenario would actually be a low documentation loan, right? So we don't need nearly as many documents. If it's under about the breakpoint's about $172,000 of aircraft value, anything below that's probably going to fall into our low documentation category. So we're going to gather those documents from you. So you're going to fill out your application. One of our loan specialists is going to reach out, have a conversation. Hey, what kind of aircraft are you buying? Let us know a little bit more. We'll get a spec sheet from you or from the broker that's selling it, and we'll load that into the system. And then what we'll do is we're going to send that into underwriting, right? So we're going to take all of your documents. We're going to tell you all the documents that we need. We'll give you an update whenever we need more. It'll go into underwriting. The underwriting process typically takes between 2 and 5 days, kind of depending on what type of volume we're seeing. Today, like the backlog in underwriting right now with most of our lenders has cleared up in the last week, as we kind of went through this big surge in the month of March and April, and then we've kind of eased in the month of May. And so a lot of the backlogs are clearing. So it'll be an underwriting from anywhere from 2 to 4 business days. Then we'll get an official loan offer, right? So we'll discuss with you, hey, this is the indicative terms that we've gotten from this lender. here's our opinion, professional opinion based off of kind of what we see in the marketplace. Hey, we should shop it. Hey, this is probably going to be as good as we're going to get. So then you sign. And then from there, it can be anywhere from, 5 to 8 business days. It depends on if your aircraft needs an appraisal. Some don't, some do, kind of dependent on price point, things like that. And then we fund. You set up escrow. We've got contacts at escrow companies. We get everybody together, get ready to fund. You'll get a DocuSign. You sign the DocuSign, say, yes, we're good to go. Everybody funds. Escrow sends out emails to everybody, and then we're closed. So it can be a really simple process. It's really dependent upon the purchaser and how well organized they are financially. In a similar way to probably the last time that you applied for a mortgage, the speed of the transaction, like I bought a rental property about a year ago. And like, I feel bad for the people that did my loan, because like I was not well organized. Like I did not have all my ducks in a row. So it took 3 weeks for them to get my documents. And so it was like, the clock doesn't start until you get all of your documents in. But if you're, since then, I now have folders, Google Drive folders that hold all my W-2s. It holds any, if I've got K-1s or if I've got distributions or I've got, different kinds of stuff, my mortgage statements, all of that kind of stuff. I've got Google Drive folders now organized. If you're that type of person and you can go, here's all my tax documentation in 20 minutes, then the process goes a lot quicker for you.
Interesting. Now, what kind of terms and loan, interest rates are we looking at? Interest rates have been big in the news with the housing market. What kind of interest rates and terms are we looking at for an aircraft loan?
Yeah. So today, May 20th. Yeah. Today, May 20th, 2024, we've had a really interesting shift in general sentiment in the last 30 days. We were expecting a inflation print that would look a little bit better in the last 3 or 4 weeks. We keep getting relatively bad news, which is kind of indicating to the bond markets and to the interest rate markets that we're probably going to be higher for longer. So what that's doing is it's forcing a little bit of pessimism in the debt markets today. And so on a general aviation aircraft, I would say, if you are a grade A stellar credit, not a whole lot of debt, you're probably looking starting at around 7.1% in today's market. And you could see as high as 7.75%, kind of depending. There are some outsized factors that there's a chance that we could, probably get 10 or 20 basis points better. So that's, 0.1 or 0.2% better. But yeah, 7.1 to 7.75, even up to 7.9, depending on the transaction size, is about what we're seeing in market today. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that these lenders they all jockey for position, right? So it's like somebody may drop a little bit and then everybody kind of says, oh, okay, now market's dropping, right? Well, they were all kind of vying for interest rates coming down second half of this year. So everybody's kind of getting into position and saying, we're going to lower. And then everybody has thrown on the brakes in the last 30 days and said, whoa, we may not get any decreases this year. If we do, it's going to be 1 or 2 and not 5 or 6 like we were expecting. So everybody's going to hold. And those that were jockeying for position to try and lower are either going to hold or may creep back up. So we're kind of in this time period that over the next 60 or 90 days, I wouldn't, if you're saying the difference between me buying in 30 days or 90 days is interest rates, you're probably not going to see. Now, this is not financial advice, and this is for commentary purposes only, entertainment, all that good stuff, right? I can hear my lawyer across the hall being like, by the way, picture. But I would not expect interest rates to do anything significant in the next 90 days. Worst case scenario, if you're okay buying into a higher interest rate, get a loan that has either minimal or no prepayment penalties that way, or a variable interest rate. We do have a variable interest rate product that allows for you to take advantage of those interest rates going down without having to refinance. And so a lot of our clients are opting for the variable rate today because they said, okay, look, variable rate is somewhere between 7.2 and 7.3 in today's market, kind of general speaking. And they're saying, look, as interest rates go down, I want to ride the wave down instead of locking in and then in 1 year going to do this whole process again. They say, hey, we want to ride the wave down. Other clients are saying, hey, we'll go ahead and lock something in this year, but we'll likely refinance in 12 to 18 months as we see rates coming down. But what that does is it locks them in and it hedges them a little bit in the event that interest rates were to go up. Depending on market conditions in 12 to 18 months when you go to refinance, if you, like, let's say today, we're going to use real general numbers. This is not an indication to lend, but we'll just use some real life general numbers. Let's say today you said, I'm going to lock in a 7.29% interest rate. It's on a 15-year term, 20-year amortization. And when rates come down, I'm going to refinance. Well, if you stay with the same institution, a lot of times if there are prepayment penalties, the prepayment penalties are waived. And so that is good, right? You don't have to pay to get out of it. But let's say in 12 months, you do have a prepayment penalty. Those range from 3% in the first year. So like a 3-2-1, which is 3% in the first year, 2% in the second year, 1% in the third year. It's 3% of the loan balance that you're then going to have to pay to that institution to move your loan to another bank. That's a real cost. And then you've got closing fees and all of that kind of stuff that goes around it. And that can deter the situation for you. Mm-hmm. If you refinance with the same lending institution, you likely will be able to get those prepayment penalties waived, but you may not get the other rate and terms that you're looking for. Like let's say your amortization goes down in a year, right? For some reason, right? And banks are very fickle. They change their minds on things just for no reason, right? There's a reason, but it's oftentimes feels like there is no reason. And so if you lock in, make sure that you've got an easy out. So if whether that's, hey, I'm going to refinance with the same institution, drop my rate, maybe a 1.5%, they're going to waive the pre-penalties, right? Get that either verbally or in writing when you go to actually fund the loan, or look for an option that may have either a light prepayment. I mean, we've got banks that have 1% in the first year. If you're going to refinance and 1% is going to be the difference, you should probably just hold on to it and wait for the 12 months to expire. And then you can refinance in day 366. Or maybe it's no prepayment penalty, those types of loans. That's what I'd be looking for if you're thinking, hey, I'm going to go ahead and refinance this in 12 months, which is what a lot of our clients are looking for right now.
Yeah, and you guys can provide that guidance, going through.
Yep, exactly.
Cool. Well, Preston, man, this has been action-packed as far as a lot of information. I appreciate you coming on. If people wanted to find out more and they're getting in the space of getting ready to buy an airplane, how do they find you guys at Flying Finance?
So it's real easy, flyingfinance.com, or go to flyingmag.com and you'll find our ads all over the place. Aircraftforsale.com. We really like good URLs. The only one we don't have is flying.com. It's owned by Expedia, so we would love to own that. They're not using it. We'd love to own it if you guys want to get rid of it. But yeah, flyingmag.com, aircraftforsale.com, flyingfinance.com. We like to be pretty literal so that it's easy to find. I'm easy to find. I'm on LinkedIn, Preston Holland. And I'm a little spicier on Twitter, X now, so at Preston Holland 6. And I tweet about private aviation and aircraft prices and all that kind of stuff. So
awesome. Well, Preston, I appreciate your time today. I know the audience got a lot of good information. So, if you're interested in just getting in the aviation market as buying a plane, I mean, this Flying has it covered. So go check them out. Preston, again, thank you for all the value and the time today. Really appreciate it. And I look forward to, looking forward to checking you guys at Flying Finance for the next airplane, at least for us.
Thanks, man. Yeah, we would, we'd love to have you. And I'm excited. Hopefully we'll see you at Oshkosh this year. And I just want to say thank you for all that you're doing with this podcast. I mean, you're really reaching out into a community, not only airline pilots and not only general aviation, but really reaching out into the community and doing a lot of really good work on Instagram and on YouTube and all of those. So thank you for continuing to spread the good word.
I appreciate that, Preston. Yeah, like you said, it is a community, and I love the community. So, yeah, we'll see you back at Oshkosh, and if you guys are going to Oshkosh, I'll see you guys there too. But
we should do a meetup maybe at our booth. That'd be fun.
That sounds like a great. I'm down. Let's
All right, cool. I just made an executive decision. We're doing a meetup at the Flying booth, so I'll have my people call your people.
There you go. Perfect. Well, I appreciate it, Preston. Everybody else, hey, yeah, I'll see you at Oshkosh. We're going to do a meetup, and you guys come on out. I'd love to hang out with you and kind of see your journey too. But as far as this podcast goes, we are done, and we do appreciate you guys listening. If you guys are interested in buying an airplane, obviously go check out my friend Preston and Flying Magazine and Flying Finance. A lot of good stuff over there. So we'll see you on the next podcast here in another week.
Going up, going up, going up, going up, going up.